A very good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you've all got refreshed with the coffee and networking. We will have a longer networking session after this next segment in this morning for the lunchtime, so you can catch up with your friends then on. Just a little bit of introduction from on myself. For those of you who have not seen me this morning, my name is Andrew. I'm from a company called Revisto, and we are basically a BIM collaboration platform that encourages coordination and shared data amongst all stakeholders within the construction life cycle, democratizing BIM for everyone. Now, I hope you've all had a great break and are ready for this next session. It's going to be an explosive lineup. Up next, we have Yixiang Huang, Deputy Director of the CORENET X Project Office at BCA. She plays a key role in developing IFC SG standards, shaping digital building regulations and streamlining compliance in Singapore. Today, she'll walk us through the CORENET X implementation journey, sharing how this initiative is transforming regulatory processes and digital workflows. Now, please join me in welcoming Yixiang Huang on stage. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning. I'm Yixiang from the Building and Construction Authority, and I'll be sharing on Singapore's CORENET X implementation journey today. I'll start with the key essentials of CORENET X, introducing what is IFC SG before elaborating on how we are getting our stakeholders ready. First and foremost, what does CORENET X aim to achieve? CORENET X started in 2018 as part of Singapore's digital transformation efforts to redefine our regulatory approval processes. As can be seen on the screen, starting from the left, we recognized from the start that CORENET X would be different strokes for different folks. We asked ourselves, how could we align all of our interests in CORENET X? Thus, in 2018, we carried out a service journey that involved more than 100 public and private sector leaders and representatives. This service journey helped us to arrive at our common aspirations for CORENET X. We must always remember the importance of the 5 C's that we see here, especially collaborate, as we embark on this very complex journey together. We conducted many rounds of interviews and workshops with our developers, architects, engineers, builders, BIM and digital leaders as we developed the different parts of CORENET X. In December 2023, we had a soft launch where live pilot projects started making the very first CORENET X submissions. In October this year, CORENET X will start mandatory submissions for larger projects above 30,000 square meters. Many people had the impression that CORENET X was mainly about BIM and IFC. Actually, the biggest transformation of CORENET X is the streamlining of fragmented processes in regulatory submissions. If you look at the top half of the screen, in the existing process, the architect and engineers make their own regulatory submissions separately to individual agencies at different times. This resulted in design coordination happening too late downstream, requiring multiple amendments or worse, abortive reworks on site. CORENET X is about the new, what we call RABW, or Regulatory Approval Process for Building Works. As you can see from the lower half of the screen, our regulatory processes have now been redesigned into 3 main gateways, where multiple disciplines make coordinated submissions together to multiple agencies in each gateway. Submissions must be coordinated in order to obtain consolidated approval from the multiple agencies. In this way, design is much more coordinated before it reaches the site for construction. To facilitate multidisciplinary submissions, BIM software, apps, and platforms are used extensively. This is not just BIM modeling in silo, but the use of BIM in a collaborative way to meet the different use cases of the creators and receivers of the data in the models. The only way to do this is through interoperability and open data standards. CORENET kickstarts the exchange of data through collaborative BIM, and we hope that this effort will continue beyond regulatory use cases to benefit the rest of the building and asset lifecycle. IFC was identified as the common data standard and file format to be submitted into CORENET to be used in a back-end collaboration platform for our agencies to process submissions concurrently and holistically. We are also developing an automated model checker based on IFC and will channel data for various use cases in our future centralized data hub. Some of you may be wondering about the IFC-SG in the middle. No worries, I will share more in the later slides. As I round up the essentials of CORENET, I just want to share on the project team's journey and experience when they make submissions on CORENET. Firstly, they will coordinate their design, review their models in native and openBIM formats, as you see on the left. They will then start to create draft submissions on the CORENET submission portal, which includes features to preview models. When our automated model checker is ready in the future, they can also carry out pre-checks too. When the project team is ready, they will make official submission into CORENET. The files will be transmitted from the submission portal to the backend collaboration platform, where agencies will receive the files and start processing the submission together at the same time. Within 20 working days, which works out to be about a month, agencies will issue a consolidated response, including a BIM collaboration format or BCF file. This BCF file contains issues that agency officers have tagged to the BIM submission models. The project team will then review the agency's responses and revise their design for resubmission back to the agencies. We are also encouraging our project teams to indicate their design revisions through the BCF format and include that in the resubmissions. Now, more about IFC-SG. IFC-SG was developed by our Government Technology Agency of Singapore, also known as GovTech. IFC-SG consists of localized additions to the IFC4 reference view. These additions represent the regulatory requirements of our agencies, such as the fire engine access road seen on the right, required by the Fire Safety and Shelter Department of our Singapore Civil Defence Force. We want to emphasize that IFC-SG is neither a modified copy nor derivative version of the IFC standard. It is an informal term created to help our industry professionals learn how our local regulatory requirements are to be embedded into BIM and exported for coordinated regulatory submissions. We have also recently started uploading IFC-SG definitions into the buildingSMART data dictionary, where we call it the Singapore Data Dictionary. To be honest, we are still learning how to populate the definitions to better meet the bSDD requirements. We see potential in the bSDD to help our industry practitioners create IDS to verify IFC-SG data quality for their submissions. Lastly, I'll be sharing on our initiatives to help our industry practitioners transit to CORENET with emphasis on IFC-SG. There are 5 key steps to successfully submit an IFC-SG model. It starts with the CORENET Code of Practice, where the user identifies regulatory information for different types of submissions. Currently, the Code of Practice contains 48 IFC entities, 212 object types, and 334 properties from 7 regulatory agencies. Oftentimes, modelers are experts in BIM software, but may not have much idea of how and why regulatory data is mapped in different parts of the model. CORENET requires the party doing the modeling to communicate regularly with the party familiar with the regulatory requirements. This is a start to collaboration within the in-house team of each firm. With feedback from industry that it was hard to read the Code of Practice as a PDF, we developed a website version which went live last December 2024. Besides containing info on when to submit what to which agency, the CORENET website also contains learning resources for our submission portal, as well as information on CORENET events and training. After being clear on the information needed in the model, the project team can access our IFC-SG Resource Toolkit, which is a package containing an Excel mapping file, native BIM software templates, good practice guides, and apps. The toolkit started out with just number 3, as you can see in the center, BIM software resources, but it slowly expanded as the industry suggested their wish list to help them and their teammates to overcome the IFC-SG learning curve. Industry volunteers have also kindly provided extra items or notified us on updates to the existing items in this toolkit. We also welcome the audience here to share any suggestions and contributions you might have to improve this toolkit for everyone. Besides developing and regularly updating IFC-SG configuration files to our latest regulatory requirements, BIM software developers have also developed web pages containing useful apps, troubleshooting guides, YouTube playlists, and even free of charge onboarding programs to help our industry learn IFC-SG. Besides understanding regulatory requirements and embedding those requirements in native BIM, it is also important to review the models in both native and IFC format. We are grateful to vendors who specially develop apps to help our industry in their CORENET submissions and hope that this ecosystem of independent apps could grow stronger and larger, especially beyond regulatory use cases. To encourage more of these apps to be developed, our Infocom Media Development Agency, or IMDA, is helping to roll out funding for our firms to adopt the apps with up to 50% funding support under the Productivity Solutions Grant. One of the recently pre-approved apps is the Build Search IFC-SG Validator, as shown on the left. In the spirit of sharing, our industry practitioners have also put in extra effort to create step-by-step guides to help fellow practitioners in improving their modeling workflows. Besides good practices, they also help to highlight gaps in native BIM software and wish lists across different IFC apps. We facilitate and help to convey the feedback to respective software and app vendors, whom we hope will try their best to address the gaps and wish lists. Besides accurate data mapping, our CORENET X BIM Help Desk team also works closely with the BIM software vendors and advanced industry users to come up with good practices, such as geo-referencing multiple files from one or more BIM software. As our industry becomes more knowledgeable in IFC, they have also started giving suggestions on improving IFC-SG itself for more efficient modeling, such as streamlining the naming of spaces across multiple regulatory agencies that you see here. For example, a shop could have different definitions to different agencies, but because each agency checks the shop for different requirements. By standardizing the space names, industry does not need to have too many overlapping space components in their model submissions. We're also glad that our agencies are open-minded and also slowly building up their IFC-SG knowledge. So they are also welcoming all these ways to improve the regulatory requirement representation in the IFC-SG standard. This simplifies modeling requirements for regulatory compliance, enabling the project teams to focus more time and resources for actual design. Last but not least, we have rolled out a variety of training courses, also with support from PSG funding, to help our industry with CORENET X onboarding. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yixiang, for sharing the CORENET X workflow with the audience here. You didn't stay for the Q&A part, but no, just kidding. I think it's very insightful that BCA is doing all they can to drive digital transformation for the industry, as well as bringing CORENET X to a reality for main cons. So I really think it's a great initiative. Up next, we have a leader in digital transformation for infrastructure development. Samuel Teo, or some may know him as SAMS, is the Deputy Director of Infrastructure Information Development and Digitalization of LTA, where he drives digital innovation across major projects. A systems thinker and strategist, He is passionate about creating a connected, data-driven engineering ecosystem to enhance coordination and decision-making. Today, he'll share his insights on From Complexity to Clarity, navigating the BIM journey in infrastructure. I might add, helping us simplify and optimize BIM processes for better project outcomes. Please join me in welcoming Sam on the stage. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Andrew, for the introduction. I'm here today representing the Land Transport Authority of Singapore. And as what Andrew mentioned, I lead the infrastructure information development for LTA projects. And I'm hoping to share with you our process and our part where we came from from complexity to clarity. It was a journey that we embarked since 2019, but I'll go through the materials more to explain it. So this is a brief profile of my background, just to share that where I led LTA in the different forms of work over the years, from high-speed rail to before that, earlier in my career with LTA, enterprise risk management as well. So with that knowledge, when we were taking BIM in LTA, we took a different approach compared to conventional way of doing things, right? So if you need to connect me with LinkedIn, please feel free to add me in. Right, so just giving you a general introduction of Singapore landscape. So not sure how many of you are very familiar with Singapore. We're a very small country, and in the recent talk I had in Finland, I was saying them that if you put a small dot on the map, Singapore is actually small, a lot smaller than that. So we are actually 50 kilometer wide and 27 kilometer north to south, right? It's a very small island, and we have about 142 stations packed across 8 lines. And as introduced by BCA and earlier keynote speakers on the first day, we have 2 more new lines recently announced, and I think there are a couple more coming up, hopefully, to connect everyone in LTA and Singapore together, right? And also we have about 3.2 million of commuters, right, that we uses our public transport on a regular basis, okay? And so as part of our planning, we need to ensure that with a small footprint of Singapore geographical landscape, we need more public transport to connect people to many places in Singapore, right? So this is a digital engineering journey of our organization. It starts off in 2015, where BCA actually initiated in 2010, but infrastructure took a little while to warm up to doing BIM properly. And we started our journey in 2015, and that's where we started 3D, 4D, 5D, and 6D. These are basically the high-level information of how we progress along the years in introducing BIM in our organization. But what's most important for this sharing about complexity to clarity, we took actually the BIM in-house design for Northeast Line extension that was initiated in 2015. We did the concept design before that, but we only started really doing BIM in 2015. So that's where I'm going to go a bit deeper into the introduction. So Northeast Line extension is a station called the Punggol Coast Station, NE18, that is connected to the terminus of this Northeast Line. As you can see on the right, that's the complexity of that plot of land that leads us to the Punggol Digital District. Yeah, and it connects with GTC Retail Podium and the stations at the underground, and then you have SIT at the south of that map there, and there are bus interchange as well. So there's also an entrance A and an entrance B. There are civic and public computer spaces for placemaking, where you can host public events, etc. All right, and this is the cross section of that entire district, and that's the artistic view of what it is now. As I go through the next few slides, you'll understand a bit more of the complexity of this project, because above it is a huge building that the stations underground beneath the whole structure. So we need to ensure that it's properly enforced and properly designed, but yet keeping our design in mind. We went through a design thinking workshop to discuss about how we want to present this new station that we are doing it as an LTA project. I'm not an architect, so I will not attempt to sell the beautiful design of the station. But what you can see here is actually there's a very interesting layout, and I urge you all to go to the new station to have a look, okay, to appreciate what we've done there. In the next few slides, I'll just show you broadly the BIM design, the BIM model of the entire technology project site. Okay, so as you see, the station is actually below the GTC retail podium. Below that, SIT is on the south, and in front there is all the offices. Interchange is on this side of the PDD, Punggol Digital District, and it's actually a mega multi-use, mixed-use project. Okay, and it's fully integrated with the station. So this is the basement level 1, where entrance A and entrance B has that community space for placemaking, and that's where the bus interchange. Level 2 is like that, right? But what I want to share more intimately about this is because of this project that when my team was formed in 2019, we had to study what was actually not doing right in LTA to find the gaps in our digital engineering practice. And it's anchored around the typical things that we always discuss: people, process, and technology. So on people's front, we understood that capability and competency was an issue. We had a consultant appointed for the project, but I think at the time when we started this project, BIM to infrastructure was very, very early days for us. And it took us some time to really grasp it. So everybody was applying BIM in their own way, contractor leads in their own way, and the project management team has a different perspective. So to converge all this, there's a lot of capability and competency gaps that we need to bridge, right? When it comes to process, I think you've heard also about BIM is not just software, but back in those days, software seems to be something that we all are being forced to adopt, as well as to also accommodate the practice. But that's what you have to figure out. So, and up and above that, 3D BIM back in the infrastructure sector was very, very new. We are very good 2D. When it comes to 3D, we tend to do 2D practice in BIM. So we always joke about this is actually a 2D BIM project. It's not exactly following the pure form of 3D BIM and VDC. Okay. So when it comes to enablement, we did have back then a tech. I won't name the name of that common data environment, but we have that in place. It unfortunately wasn't set up properly to support the VDC and BIM process. It was rather a very expensive file explorer. Okay, and they are all information silos. You have different disciplines, different folders, different tabs. Nobody shared it properly, but it is a central environment, and the single source of truth, versioning, etc. are not very clear. So when people access the project's files and materials, they are always working, may not be in the latest version of the files that they need for the project. So with that in mind, when we also further study how this thing converged together, we realize there are cultural gaps in terms of the practice and the belief of what BIM can do in an organization. And that takes some time for us to unravel that, along with also there's no proper information governance. Yeah. So when my team was formed, because backed by our deputy chief exec in infrastructure back then, we had the mandate to really form it, chart out what we want to do for LTA, and in the particular aspect of how do we want to look at people, process, technology, and as they come together, how do we do innovative process redesign on how we conventionally do things in 2D into 3D, as well as when we put process and technology together, how do we harness data in an environment that is collecting data that we can benefit from, not just in the projects to come, but also projects of the future, right? And as well, when we put people and technology together, how do we co-create and then share the latest information? How do we leverage on what's in the system or the technological environment to bring us better value in what we've put in place, right? And we put all together, we hope that we instill the right culture in organization. So for people, we look at capability competency building, where we formed internal knowledge-based kind of framework that we can help to steer where we want to see our people grow in. As well as for process, we talk about having international best practices, which I will cover in the next few slides, and technology enablement. How do we put together a platform and with the aim of a long-term plan of a connected digital ecosystem, we want to put in place as a foundation, as a pillar stone of what we built at a point in time, okay? And subsequently, with all this converging together, how do you introduce digital transformation, okay, which is a soft part of the putting things together, and how do we build up the community of practice, right, which I'll cover soon. So on people, this is just a high overview of what we do, a plan for our staff in LTA. So there's internal, within Singapore, and global, right? So for internal, LTA already exists. I think we have a skills and framework that we look at competency as well as the job profile. How does each job profile demands different kind of skill, different competency, and we mapped it out for all the engineering stuff, and we are very good at that. When it comes to digital, it's something new. So we had to do workshops to understand the pain points and the knowledge gap, and when we put it together, we chart out what exactly are the digital engineering capabilities we require from 3 areas. Okay, one is the project team, where they look into managing projects of a different nature from 2D in down 3D, what are the kind of competency they need to do the daily work. When it comes to our in-house design team, how do they need the depth to be supporting the project teams in their daily work? And then when it comes to the digital engineering team, which is my team, what kind of breadth and spread and spectrum do we need, as well as the depth we do for enabling our organization in the different forms, right? And when it comes to integrated digital delivery, we are plugged in with a community of practitioners with BCA, Yixiang as well, JTC, as well as HDB like Shihao. So we all of us are connected together through the IDD steering committee, and that's where we work together to also exchange ideas. But even IDD and BCA had rolled out skills framework for the built environment, which is actually during the period of COVID when it happens. We also had a lot of time to put together and structure all this new kind of framework to push and nudge the build sector together, not just by building, but also with infrastructure. And then global-wise, we anchored our processes on IFC, as well as ISO 9650, which lays the foundation and how we organize our information management. So ISO 9650 is all about information management, from the inception of developing the information for our projects, all the way to construction to help us manage the project. And that's maybe done in like 10 years or so for infrastructure. When it comes to O&M, that's where we need to ensure that what we need for operation and maintenance in the future are all considered at the early stage of the design, so that when we bring across the whole value chain, we will reap the benefits of it. And that's where also we also explore with openBIM a bit deeper, and that's the main connecting glue, because we have to talk about interoperability, especially when it comes to infrastructure. We have stations in the center, tunnels on the left, on the right, and there are other different contractors. We need to converge on all this conversation interface and do all this proper clash detections and whatnot. So we need a common language. That's why IFC standards are where we landed on. And I think we are the first government agency to really push for that to happen. Otherwise, it will make our project a bit more complicated. So with that development framework in mind, we then have a variety of sources of how we help our internal users. So from in-house training, where we conduct massive training with content about BIM, content of project management with BIM, as well as to the point of engaging our leaders in educating them on BIM and ISO 9650. When it comes to self-help portals who are more digital savvy, that's where we create our landing page, our intranet set up for them to go understand a bit more with all the BIM information put together in a repository. When it comes to digital learning app, we have fundamentals building, fundamentals content plugged onto our learning app, which is a government portal, so that staff, as they go along, they have no time to learn, go through a lesson for 3 or 4 day course. We created bite-sized digital apps for them to use and read and learn as they commute on our trains, all right, on a daily basis. So for hands-on training, for those who are more in-depth technical knowledge is required, we conduct training, not just on the digital tools like authoring tools, but also our CDE, which is our insight platform, which I'll cover later. So introducing new technologies to our organization, there's also a need for a bit more intimate and personalized service. So with that, we also one-on-one help desk for our insight solution platform that we can help users to be familiar with how to use our insight system, which is our CD, which I'll cover later on. And with that, they are able to hopefully bridge that knowledge gap. On process, I think you're all familiar with this chart. I won't really go deep into this again. It's the ISO 9650 chart. And it talks about how information should be managed in our organization, right? So how we actually ensure that this goes beyond just LTA into the value chain. We do prescribe that clearly in our contract appointment, that we have a clear requirement. So we set the ground that if you want to our projects, you have to know that we are adhering to ISO 9650, and we urge and encourage our contractor and value chain to do likewise. So how do we govern it then? the best way you can do is through our common data environment, our Insight platform, which I'll explain again later. Just that the whole process of information management, how you ensure the single source of truth, the roles, the responsibility, how data are being put together for our projects are all defined in our process. And I think this is something just to sell a bit of ourselves. Yeah, we are one of the early adopters of ISO 19650 in Singapore, and we're proud to get a certification back in 2022. Yeah. So on technology enablement, which is actually the foundation of what we need to lay very clearly with a vision in mind for the next 10, 15 years. When we set up our Insight platform, we did think many years ahead because we know that if we plan for only the technology and the process we're going to support now, it's only going to lead us that far. So as part of our roadmap and our strategy, this is Insight system is a very crucial piece for us to harness digital in the coming years, right? Insight itself is a digital platform. I wouldn't just say CDE is a platform because we amalgamate different technologies together, like virtual reality, augmented reality, virtual desktop infrastructure, as well as government commercial cloud. So with this different tech put together into a single platform called Insight, we offer a one-stop for our project team and contractor to interact. So Insight was meant purely for LTA with the different people using Insight to support the JRL and CR project. And in that itself, there are about 8 modules or 8 functionalities that we offer in Insight, from submittal transmittal to document delivery management, virtual reality, as well as the infrastructure, along to site issues or project reporting, insurance management, defects inspection, as well as asset registration management. Although we are only at the 5th year of our JRL projects, we really plan ahead what we need to do to collect data in the model and on site to put together to ensure that we are able to then support the maintenance solution that LTA uses for our rail and bus. Okay, and it helps to connect also all the different kind of contractors we reach in our value chain, and this helps us to put everything together, thereby consolidating all our information into one environment and enable us to do our job more efficiently. Okay, so this solution is also based on LeapThought's Fulcrum Plus, and we are being kind of IFC and BCF as the core interoperable format that we communicate and collaborate with our value chain. Yeah. Insight offers this kind of I will put this 6 categories of benefits for us. They are broadly standard of what you probably expect from a digital solution, but I think they did a lot more. When we put this together, we ensured that users need not go outside of a platform to do all the collaboration they need. Everything is a one-stop shop within the environment. I don't need external, bulky, high-powered machines. I don't need another non-government machine to do all this work. Everything is within our standard laptops. We are able to do all the amazing work we do with BIM in LTA. And this is, we talk about ROI with all the investment we put in place. And when we conducted surveys and with our project teams to understand what are the uplifts when we introduce Insight, this is a very conservative number. And we saw that for information exchange, we just broadly put in 2 categories. We talk about design conflict reduction, along with the time taken to exchange. Because back then, without Insight or without platform, it's quite embarrassing to mention this, but we do use thumb drive or CD or DVD. The contractor to travel tens of kilometers to our site just to deposit drawings and models for us to review. So with Insight now, you can do it on your comfort of their offices to upload into the internet, and we got all our data. So that itself actually is a massive effort for us to cut down the manpower effort to support our project. When it comes to single source of truth, we found that our project team feedback that they are able to find information readily available and help them to manage the project better. And last but not least, the most important secret sauce, which is change management. So a lot of people talk about change management, talk about transformation, but what exactly does it mean? And different people have different approach. But for us within LTA, our team, what we do is that we really had to understand all the different pains that our different type of users go through. And that's where we use the Kluber-Ross change curve to understand when we, for lack of a better word, force something to the user's throat. How do they respond? How do they react? what are the pain, what the transition, what the feelings, what are the emotion. So when we understand and we chart out all this process and we understand the frustration they go through, we have to also know how do you facilitate them in moving through change. And that's where we use the ADKAR framework as well. So with these things in mind, these are all the soft parts of transformation that people may not have shared with you guys. So where we understand our users better, okay, we always ask ourselves a simple question. So how might we systematically address, resistance, and facilitate change and transition to make it as painless and seamless as possible? And all these considerations were put in place as we develop insight as well with our vendor. And then making sure that as best as possible, we minimize that tension and minimize that pain and frustration. And this is also very important from a lessons learned from our point of view, is that everyone is different. Whereas we handle from the digital native generation to the older users of been in the industry for 4 or 5 decades sometimes, we need to understand that each of them have different way we address the change with them. That's why this helps us to better understand and then articulate out the kind of help we can do to help our users manage that better. Okay, and this is another principle that we hold quite truly to ourselves on item 2 is to, if we want to facilitate change of each of this demographic, let's start with one person first to know how it works, and then we fine tune and then roll out it in a big way to the other people fitting that same profile. Okay. And as we roll out our change management together with our vendors, we also realize that ideally hands-on is still the best form of teaching on a one-to-one basis. We tried different forms of training in terms of self-help, small bite-sized digital videos, but it's actually not as effective as we thought it will be. And that's where we had to move that front to go and help different users of different demographics to know how to go through and navigate through the systems that we put in place. When it comes to train the trainer, we don't really believe in train the trainer after a while, because when you have trained the trainer, we need to have trained the active trainer, because some of this learn this knowledge, they do not go out to share with their own teammates. And that's where that bond is broken, right? So we need to have a bit more help with them to have active trainers, form the community of practice for them so that we can propagate them more effectively to their colleagues and staff. And also the other part, when you do our train the trainer, when we do that, it's like a ratio of 1:8. We train one guy to help go back to train 8 people in the project team. But again, it doesn't work. We realize that we have to bring down that ratio significantly into a 1:2. Then we see a proper knowledge cascading down into the workspace and environment. And last but not least, I think we need to ensure ownership by the process owner, and only then we will ensure strong adoption. Because a lot of people want to request for functionalities or features in a solution and system, or maybe they claim they have a use case, but actually it's only a small group. And because of that, they don't cascade this down to the other project teams. They will not know the availability of such features. So which is why we have an Insight Task Force to empower different leaders to go and push through this change and adoption rate so that Insight will be properly used and helps the project team a bit better. Okay, so these are some examples of the many of the training and engagement types that we went through and the workshops that we conducted with developing more effective material with less pages. Okay, so that's why we created like quick reference guide and training materials that hits the dot to the project teams who are using Insight, for example. What are the 5 daily things they need to do on a daily basis? How to do it? We demystify them very simply so that they can take it and run. And when we do all this, we realize that after this arrangement of rollout, the training ratings we got from maybe 100% of attendees, about 54 training attendance, right? We have a score of like pretty good, 5-star. And also in terms of knowledge retention, I think the quiz we put in place tells us that more than 80% understood now the functionality of what we do in the solution. So I think this is very important for us to drive outcomes. We put together technology and people, and that's where I think it's the winning formula for us to replicate as we roll this out more to the other projects when we introduce our Insight system. All right. So with that, this is the last piece of slide on the show to you. Community practice is very important because that's where all the different users, all the different practitioners of different levels come together. And that's where conversation happens, like what buildingSMART is doing here, We bring across different adoption of openBIM together into a community to exchange ideas, learn from each other, and learn from their mistakes so that we won't replicate the same. So this is a final piece of advice I like to share with everyone here. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, for the very inspirational and sharing of how LTA has surpassed digital transformation for the whole entire government agency. Truly remarkable. And I have to thank LTA as well because I stay all the way in Pongo. Without them, I wouldn't be able to come here today, if not for the MRT. The next, we have two experts from the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department of the Hong Kong SAR government. Please welcome Francis Yuen and Yeung, electronics engineers specializing in digitalization and technology in the MEP sector. They'll be sharing insights on transforming MEP project handover practices, exploring how technologies like BCF, bSDD, IDS, IFC, and openBIM are revolutionizing BIM asset management throughout its lifecycle. With their deep expertise, we're excited to learn how these innovations are shaping the future of engineering. Let's give them a warm welcome.
I'm Francis, and this is my colleague Leo, and we are from the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department of the Government of Hong Kong SAR. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our journey in adopting openBIM. And we started our journey of adopting BIM, the native BIM journey, since 2014, and for almost 10 years. But for the adopting openBIM, this is we are still in the early stage. So our presentation topic today is transforming MEP project handover practices by embracing BCF, bSDD, IDS, IFC, and openBIM into BIM asset management lifecycle. And this project was awarded the winner of the buildingSMART openBIM Awards 2024 in the handover category last year. And we would like to take this opportunity to extend our gratitude to our partner SBI, especially Dr. Kelvin Kam and his team in co-working on this project. Thank you. So have you ever experienced when receiving a handover BIM model and where there were missing objects, missing attributes, missing colors, or having the equipment shift? And all these, what we call poor data quality, made it extremely hard for maintenance party to carry out the subsequent operations and maintenance. It also makes it hard to be maintained in the entire building life cycle. But why do we care so much about the data quality, or why do we care so much about the handover process? We, EMSD of the Hong Kong government, is one of the biggest maintenance agent in Hong Kong with for many years experience overseeing more than 1 million of E&M equipment and system in over 8,000 government venues. Information of all these equipment would be ultimately stored in our asset management portal. As you can imagine, data quality from the BIM model is crucial for us to carry out effective maintenance works in thousands of government venues. So why openBIM? Contractors in different categories or disciplines often prefer their BIM offering software, which means an organization like us has to acquire various software in order to view and comment, and which is costly and require relevant knowledge in using different software. So openBIM has an absolute advantage in solving the problem. And if the submissions are all in IFC format, we will only require one software to handle the BIM models, and it will save time to acquire different software operation techniques for our draftmen, for our technical officers, and it will save costs to to not procuring so much softwares. And the most important thing is by using the same standard, it enables seamless collaborations and interoperabilities, which greatly shorten the project lifecycle and also facilitate the future development of the digital twin platform for the smart city in Hong Kong. So having all these benefits from openBIM, we are eager to try out openBIM since 2024. So EMSD therefore engaged with some contractors in many projects to carry out some trial on the handover aspect. And this is what we observed. And this is a BIM model from a multi-trade integrated mechanical, electrical, and pumping we called MIMEP project. It is an A&A project for replacement of chiller plants. When we received the BIM model in IFC format, all the equipment were hanging in the mid-air with the framework or hanger missing. However, when we feedback our comments to the project team, they open it on their computers and everything's there with a complete model. So there should be some issues during the conversion from the native BIM to the IFC format. So one of the most common issues we heard from the trade and the industry in Hong Kong is when they were converting the native to the IFC format, they often experience different level of data loss, mainly include missing data, attributes, missing colors, or shifted objects. And they have stopped them from going to adopt openBIM further. And even they can manage to generate an IFC file with computer set of the object, they still have to deal with the tedious process to identify and rectify different types of errors found in the model, mostly due to the human input errors. And most of the time, these errors will only be discovered after the handover, and which causes huge impact on subsequent operations and maintenance. So what is even worse, these errors data could hinder the future system integrations for BIM, for asset management, or digital twin purpose. So with our years of experience in the EMM industry, we have developed a highly customized requirement to facilitate the handover of equipment. As technology advances, new systems and new equipment are often introduced. And when new requirements arise, how can we effectively manage the new and existing requirements so that the contractors can be timely updated with the latest requirements? All these years, submissions of BIM model in native format was always preferred by the contractors or consultants to facilitate the handover process. And we, EMSD, has established a native BIM-based workflow for a few years ago, but today this is no longer sufficient. While we are studying and establishing on the openBIM workflow, how can we maintain both native and openBIM workflow effectively? So how to tackle the above challenges? And we have launched a study in early 2024. We have many pain points, and obviously it could not be solved by a single tool. What we need is a toolbox of solutions. Our toolbox leverage 4 openBIM standards: bSDD, IDS, BCF, and IFC. This toolbox includes the first and largest public dictionary in Hong Kong, with 90% of time saving for maintaining the changes. Through the implementations of IDS and bSDD, we have contributed back to the BSI community with over 40 rounds of idea exchanges and discussion. And we have also established an IFC conversion guidelines with our partners to help improving the quality of openBIM handover. So the process, it seems very complicated, but not that not so scaring, right? So we have adopted some new tools and also developed some new ones on our own. And as you can see, we have 5 green boxes and 1 yellow box highlighted in the process, which shows our new initiative in both the rapid workflow on the left side and the new openBIM workflow on the right side. And now Leo will go through the details of the process workflow.
Thank you, Francis. Let's see some of the details. First of all, the attribute requirement repository, the ARR. Rather than in form of piles of PDF files, we have turned our years of experience into a handover requirements into a database, and that is the ARR. This database serves as a single source of truth, which enables the generation of both human-friendly versions and also machine-friendly data files. These machine-friendly files, data files, and then pushed to the two converters, also developed by us for generating the bSDD JSON files and IDS XML files. With this automation, we saved about 90% of time wherever there is an update. With that bSDD JSON being uploaded to the BSI cloud server, being the first and largest public dictionary in Hong Kong, second largest in Asia, we have covered more than 380 classes, 1,800 properties, and more than 7,000 class-to-property relationships. Then we use the API connection provided by BSI and develop these Revit plugin within the existing Revit workflow. This plugin will tap onto the single source of truth on the cloud, the bSDD, and help the supply chain to create attributes confidently and effectively. They can save tens of hours of time each time, and also have a better QA and attribute consistency for these 300 plus asset types. Still remember the flying equipment. Even project team are not using the IFC for editing. We have developed an IFC conversion guide, which also include the mapping file specific to our asset requirements, so that no matter which version of Revit you are using, they can still export IFC with confidence without data loss, missing object or coordinates. As you can see, the data is now coming back. Using the IDS schema, we are able to carry out these 4 types of attributes. Checking which are important to us. Our IDS is directly linked to the bSDD, and thanks to the BSI community, an enhancement was done upon our request, and it can now support our complex validation requirements. With that, we have tried it out using the BIM model of our headquarters building, as you can see here, and validate using the market available IDS tracker. Okay. The building consists of 15 IFC files and more than 37,000 of assets. We have proven rather than days, only less than half an hour is required to go through the complex tracking and generate the outstanding issue in BCF for review and rectify before handover to the O&M team. Since IDS is a relatively new standard, we have tried not only one IDS tracker, but 3 from different solutions, one from Finland, one from Italy, and one from United States, so that a broader community can benefit from it. So there are our solution to the handover pain points. For the evolving requirement of EMSD, we developed our asset requirement repository that acts as a single source of truth and upload them to the bSDD, which support storing different versions of requirements. This automated process also saves us more than 90% of time to handle new requirements in future. Within 9 months, our requirements contributed to bSDD has become the first and the largest in Hong Kong. To solve the tedious job in data validation, we have created the IDS and BCF-based data validation rule set and incorporated that together with our IFC handover workflow. The contractor can now download the latest requirements from bSDD anytime and anywhere and run with our defined rule set for validation. With this vendor-neutral QA/QC process, hours of manual tracking could be reduced. We have also established IFC conversion guide and automation tools to help with solving data loss issues of E&M equipment for handover when converting from Revit and to IFC formats. All these are not only to be achieved without close collaboration. The project team has automatically transferred 1,800 plus bSDD properties and more than 7,000 IDS tracks for the current project. We have also helped to refine the bSDD schema to support various edge classes. For example, to increase registers length from 200 to 3,000 plus characters to meet the project requirements. We also appreciated that some of the openBIM software vendors have made timely revision to their platforms to successfully embrace IDS and openBIM. For example, to optimize IFC imports to their platform in alignment with the complicated data type requirements from the project IDS. By successfully showcasing the whole transformation process through an IFC-based workflow to the trade and industry, we hope that we can help to push forward the openBIM adoption in the asset management lifecycle. What's next? To bring openBIM adoption further, we are most happy to share our findings and tools with any interested parties. We look forward to collaborate with multidisciplinary stakeholders for more trial projects. As we have improved on this openBIM standard, we are dedicated to cultivate a stronger openBIM culture to enable more openBIM usage and demand for openBIM solutions, so that the entry barrier to the openBIM industry can be lowered and increase market competition in the future. Okay, that's all of our sharing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo and Francis. To Jesai. Sorry, my Cantonese must represent a bit. So, all right, I hope that that was an insightful session from both of them from the Hong Kong government perspective. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them whilst they're still here before they fly off, yeah? Okay. Now, for our last speaker, I'm pleased to introduce, last speaker for this portion of the morning. I'm pleased to introduce our final speaker for the session, Mr. Architect William Lau, the principal of William Lau Architects. William is a leading advocate for integrating technology and information management in the built environment. He has played a key role in promoting the adoption of ISO 19650 standards in Singapore and was instrumental in developing the Singapore National Annex to align local practices with this global standard. Today, he will be sharing his expertise on enhancing Singapore's built environment information management with ISO 19650-2 and the National Annex. Please join me in welcoming William Lau.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm between you and lunch, so let's do this good and sharp. All right. Just to see a bit, I guess you have listened from the previous speakers, the use of digital information management, and I think 9650 is not new to everybody. I think we also realize that it's a key and fundamental to how you manage information, especially in the so-called digital project. Right? As you're aware, without this, and also because in fact in Singapore, we actually deal a lot with international projects and international players. So in fact, 9650 play a major role in the sense that when they come together, even they can be from overseas, they are all more or less, if you follow this system, they're more or less aligned, right? And it helps really in progressing the project. So with this, let's go into this. Why Singapore need its own so-called 19650, so to speak. We require this framework, as you are aware, under the so-called ISO standard, they actually allow some form of twigging. As we are aware, every country may operate somewhat, have certain nuances in the project management. And in the case of IDD in Singapore, we really need this to do, to help us in the sense that it requires, in a way, it requires us to define certain goals and standard in order to solve the problem, right? Especially, and we deal with the code of practice as well as our so-called, as we go into BIM submission and all that, right? We need to satisfy quite a lot of requirements. So we need really to have a so-called national annex in order to overcome this issue. So in a way that we have to establish industry connect, right? Context and to support a procurement, especially for going to various agencies and projects, and also the team players. All right. Excuse me. And also to satisfy the local regulatory requirement as well. So we really need to have this so-called local annex, national annex to support this. We focus on this national annex on adoption basically on the part 2 of the 9650. And the standardization and interoperability across diverse projects and stakeholders, right? So essentially, we talk about the part 1, right? Concepts and principle, and also part 2 on the delivery phase of the project, and we added on the national so-called annex, and that's where we want to achieve the goal of having standardization, as well as enhancement and integration and future-proofing. Right? As we are aware, we are actually moving on to even other CORENET will come to play. So hopefully, with this integration, we are able to manage, right, in terms of the data integrity. So talk about the development procedure, right? It involves actually a few steps. First of all, you have the initial research. Right, we have to actually look at and we analyze the various what other countries are doing. In fact, a lot of countries have developed their own national annex, which I'll touch on later. And then we gather the GPEs. Right, GPEs are basically the government agencies that actually manage some of these projects. So we get hold of them and say that when we are doing in so-called in a project, what are the issues involved, right? Whether it may be ISO specialists and also the CD involved. How can we best do the so-called move the digital project as least painful as possible? Of course, there's a TC59. This is actually under the Singapore Standards boards. They actually look at creating standards. So we actually also have to cross-check with them. Are we in the right direction? What are the issues? Or are there anything that we can learn from the national ISO side? Especially in terms of alignment. We don't want to create something that actually goes against the actual initial standard as well, right? And we actually create a so-called alignment to the ISO work group as well. So actually we study the clause, make sure that there's no conflict. And of course, after that, when it becomes acceptable, we have to think of how to roll it out, right? And to publicize this standard. And incorporation, this is quite important as I'll show later. We need to work with the vendors and also other vendors that are so-called stakeholders that are involved in this project so that they can actually implement the national standard effectively. Okay, who are the stakeholders? First of all, we actually engage government bodies, essentially a BCA. LTA, as Sam has actually demonstrated, they are one of the first agency to really deal deeply into the 9650. So we actually draw a lot of so-called inputs from there. We also deal with the TACs, right? Essentially, they are all the organization, the stakeholders in the local BE. Talk about engineers, buildingSMART Singapore, of course. RIDAS, the developers as well, contractors, architects and engineers. So actually involve them as a discussion as to how we can manage our own national standard. Industry representative. So we actually look at the so-called the more advanced users. In fact, most of them have actually obtained the 1960 certificate, and we talk to them as because they are heavily involved in digital projects. So we get so-called inputs from them. What are the pain points? How can we best manage this? So with this input, we actually develop our own annexes. Also, like I was mentioned just now, we actually look at national annex, so-called national annex of other countries. We look at Hong Kong, Canadian, in Britain as well, the Center for Digital Build, and UK guidance, right? Basically, as you know, the 9650 started from the UK, the paper. Locally, also, we look at our own CAD layering standard, code of practice for building information submission, the e-submission. And also, we also look at, in addition to LTA, JTC as well, the employer's information requirement. So together, we actually studied this whole lot, and we come up with our own so-called standard. Our so-called content is very similar to the most of the other national annex as well, except that we actually talk a bit, or rather we concentrate on the convention, metadata, and the BIM workflow, which is actually part of the whole 9650 workflow as well. Right. Okay, enhanced file management, right? That is actually required in terms of the file naming, right? As you're aware, even in 9650, there is actually a standard format already. But however, when we deep dive into it, realize that we need to do something to make it more suitable. In the sense of cross-platform compatibility, right? We need to have a very consistent so-called method. That means once you have the name convention rolled out, anybody who looks at a file name will know exactly what are these files for and where they should be placed or where are they referring to. For that, we have, first of all, the option 1. We have 2 options. First of all, to deal with the general building projects. This is quite similar to the original 9650 file naming. It's said that you just tweak it a bit and we just put the name more, in a way, more localized, so that for local people, they actually understand it better. We'll have it doing. We also look into the, actually, this input is from LTA. Because as you're aware, LTA projects and the normal building projects, actually, there are a lot of difference, right? In terms of asset class alone, as Sam has mentioned, not just the building, they have the tracks, they have a tunnel. So in the whole workflow process, there are somewhat different, and we have to address this. So one way to address this is actually to do the file naming convention. We tweaked it so that, especially when you do into the sub-level, sub-level, right? There are a lot of players in there, more players compared to building, so that each of them will know the role and where to get a file from and understand what the file means by just looking at that. We also, in fact, the VC, you can get to this file. There is actually a file name converter, right? In the sense that it's an Excel file, but you actually put in the name, you can actually convert it quite easily. It's a mapping. So this will again help in terms of if people having problem and you need to change a file name. All right, metadata. What are we looking about this? Especially, the single source of truth is very important. Right, under the ISO 9650, the 4 main steps, right? The work in progress, shared, publish, and archive. So we adhere to this whole sequence, except that we just, in a way, try to streamline it as much as possible, right? So that your file will not be so-called lost. Right? Some say, oh, somewhere after somewhere you cannot find what is happening or what's the latest adjustment. So there are basically 2 codes. One is the status code to show where it is, and there's a revision code. Right? In other words, when there are some changes to the files, how do we track it, and what is the versioning? Right? How many versions have it been reiterating before it went on to the published state? Okay, so that's why we're looking at the CDE workflow, right? Work in progress, share, publish, and archive. Right? This is standard in the ISO. Okay, this is more of the workflow of the files when it's amended somehow, how we track the versioning. So on the the top right hand corner actually will tell you by looking at the numbers, right? You can actually know which version it is, whether it's a major revision or is it a minor revision or some tweaking based on input of the different players in the project team, right? Okay. So implementation, right? With this, we roll this out, and of course, we actually monitor them. And LTA projects, right? As Sam has mentioned, they are really a full adopter of this, and it actually is implemented in the few projects: Johor Regional Line, Cross Island Line, as well as the North-South Corridor. He will explain in terms of how they implement this and what are the advantage or benefit that they, in terms of the ROI and all that, right? And also more important is the stakeholder engagement, right? So that it's smoothen the whole flow of the information flow throughout the whole project process. Fulcrum, okay, LeapThought is one of the, in fact, if you visit the booth, right, they actually showcase of their so-called solutions. As Sam has already mentioned, Insight is actually produced by them, and it actually helps them to run the so-called the LTA's so information workflow, right, using Insight. Right. Again, you see the advantage of doing it. The benefits is that standardizing data management, portfolio optimization, efficient project delivery, operational efficiency, data-driven decision making, and of course the IDD advantage. As I mentioned, we need to future-proof how we're going to move on from here digitally, right? So this whole national annex has to address how we can move on. Talk about ACC. A lot of you are very familiar with Autodesk product solution, right? Actually, they developed a ACC environment. Again, it's ISO 9650 compliant. In addition, they actually also adopt our national annex in it as well, right? Again, role-based management, they already highlighted the various roles involved, how the information is moved on or responsible by a certain party, and how can it move to the next stage of development. Folder structure, right? Similar to the 9650, we're actually adhering to that, but it gives you a very good guide in terms of where you get information from and at what stage it is supposed to be. Workflow configuration, again, this is similar to the so-called the CD environment there. Naming convention implication, of course, they also adopt our national annex file naming convention. So this template has been implemented in piloting projects and a few file projects. And in fact, they already planned Autodesk to give another so-called demonstration and seminar on this. They're going to tweak it and achieve some improvement on the whole template. Right? This is going to be, it's an ongoing thing. And come May or April or May, they're going to have this thing. So do look out for this for those who are local here, right, to learn more. Now, we are actually looking at how we can carry on potential expansion of this standard. Exploring, we're now looking into part 4, right? What would the impact on a local build environment, especially on digital projects? And basically, it's a review and then see whether we need to so-called improve it further, right? Essentially addressing the need of industry, especially when CORENET comes into play. We suspect that we may need to do a bit of tweaking. Information exchange, I think is very key. As you're aware, the information flow, the data flow is very important, right? We do not want to disrupt that. So we have to make sure that all the stakeholders are aware exactly how you're going to manage this. So all the more, we're looking into not just the national annex as well. We are actually keeping a close watch on the IFC-SG. We realize that IFC-SG is going to play a key role. How can it make this information flow even better? So with that, I end my talk here. I think we have time for questions. Probably not. It's okay. So Andrew, for you.
Thank you, William, for your presentation. It was very insightful to learn from your years of experience in the industry.